Welcome to the Appetite for Discussion show with your host, Brendan Crouch.
Thanks, Julius. Appreciate it. And Mr. Jack Grossman, thank you, sir, for coming in to the studio today to be a guest on the Appetite for Discussion show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I got to say, your book that you wrote, and that's the reason here to talk today, called Child of the Forest, is a great book. And where can people find the book if they wanted to purchase?
Well, the best place is really at www.jackgrossman.com.
Okay.
You'll get the highest quality book that's out there. I will personally sign it, and you'll get a good deal on it.
All right, fantastic. So that's your www.jackgrossman.com.
Correct.
And that's where they can go order the book. Could you tell us a little bit, well, first of all, before we dive into the book, could you give us a little history maybe about yourself, where you're from, and then what led you to wanting to write this book?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I have faced anti-Semitism my entire life, pretty much in every community that I've lived in Florida and Indiana and even here in North Carolina, to the extent of when I was younger, our places of worship were trashed, graffitied with swastikas and red paint, Holocaust memorials smashed with sledgehammers, leaflets strewn all over the property, from hate groups, and pretty much the whole gambit. And, so I grew up with that, and we needed to, inform our children as to what to expect with that as well. It's rampant. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's really on a meteoric rise right now, not just in Europe, but in the U.S. and of all places on college campuses.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Jewish group or community is actually the highest right now, statistic-wise, of racial discrimination or racial hate or acts of violence.
That's correct.
And that's actually underreported in the news.
Yep, quite a bit. And there are a lot of things going on that you just don't see in the news, and different movements on college campuses that are cloaked in social justice when, in fact, they're purely anti-Semitic and really screaming out for the destruction of Israel and eliminating Israel and eliminating Jews.
Where do you think that's coming from?
That's a really good question. I don't know that maybe it never really went away, and that's really the reason that I went through this project was I met a Holocaust survivor back in 2006, and her dying wish was to eradicate genocide and to do everything that she could and leave a legacy behind of educating not just children but the world.
And were you in North Carolina when you met her?
I was at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. It was a bus trip with 12-year-old children. We had our youngest daughter on the bus, and I served as a chaperone. And when we got to the museum, which I had been to several times before, we didn't go right on the tour. They kind of escorted us into a small meeting room, and a little bitty lady, senior lady, walked in and started telling her Holocaust experiences, and it just totally blew me away. I couldn't shake it, kind of became ingrained in my head, and for the whole day and throughout the tour and the bus ride home, and to the point where the first thing I did when I got in the house back in Mooresville is I researched to see if there was a book or a movie about her life that I could share with my family, and prove to myself that I heard it correctly, because it just seems so unbelievable to be a true story. But in fact, it is a true story. And
if for those of who are listening or watching on YouTube, if you've never been to the Holocaust Museum, and if you are in Washington D.C., it's a must go. My wife and I went several years ago, and I got to tell you, I didn't know what to expect, but it's a moving experience to see, what hate can do and what the Jewish people went through. Everyone should see it, and experience that. So it was the lady
Charlene.
Charlene,
yeah.
That's the lady you met on the bus.
Didn't meet her on the bus. I met her at the museum.
At the
She's
museum,
the lady
right.
that came in and spoke to our, a room of 55 people, mostly children and a handful of chaperone adults. When I realized there wasn't a book or a movie about her life, I looked up to my wife and I said, honey, we're going to tell Charlene's story to the world, whatever it takes. That was back in 2006. So there have been some challenges and hurdles. The economic crash of 2018 or of 2008, the near-death stroke that I suffered in 2010, Charlene passing away in 2013.
Oh, wow.
Just been a series of events, but here we are, and the book was released about last end of October, early November.
So you started this in 2006, and it released in 2018. So there's 12 years,
correct,
of hard work that went into this book. Were you able to spend a lot of quality time with Charlene, talking to her?
Actually, I was. Yeah, I brought her to the Charlotte region and to Mooresville several times, and I went to D.C. on multiple occasions. And we spoke on the phone regularly. We became very, very close friends.
Is there a movie about
I am working on the film right now, and actually the project started out to produce an independent feature film, and then with all the hurdles got sidetracked a little bit, and decided when I was introduced to my co-author James Buchanan in 2016 to go ahead and release the book first.
Okay. Well, you know, as I was reading the book, I could see it. You know, you do such a wonderful job of being very descriptive and describing her in the situation she's in and the environment. You can see it, and I think when you're reading the book, when you get lost in the visuals, it helps tell the story. And I got to be honest with you, and I don't want to give anything about the book away. I want people to really read this and enjoy it. But it was tough, man. This was a heavy book, and I got to tell you, to be honest with you, there were several times, twice for sure, I put the book down, and my wife and I, and maybe it hit me different because I'm a father now. Okay, so and learning what this, you know, young girl and hero and just survivor, she's a warrior, went through to survive. You know, I put the book down and went upstairs, and the twins are 2 years old, they're sleeping, and I just got right at their cribs, and they had their one elbow hanging out, and one head's up against the rail, and I just kissed it, kissed them, and I was just like, I don't know what I would do. Because when you read the book and you go back in history and you learn about this stuff, you forget about it until you're watching a documentary, you're reading a book like the one you wrote here. If you were a father, you would say, well, I would kill him. Well, you think you would, and you would want to. But actually, they're going to kill you, and they're going to do these horrible things to your wife and your children. And then if you say, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to sit here and protect them. Well, they're still going to do those horrible things to you and your wife and your children. It's almost like there's truly nothing you could do. You're helpless.
Helpless, absolutely. But not hopeless.
Right.
As Charlene has proven with her story.
Absolutely. So I backtrack a little bit. So Charlene came down to the Charlotte area, and you showed her around, and you got to spend some time with her.
Yes.
What was that like?
We became very, very close very quickly. And really the deal for me to produce the film and write a book about her life was done over dinner in Washington, D.C. on a handshake. And that's how the relationship kind of developed. And her husband, Ed, who was along most of the times with Charlene, was a retired brigadier general. And right now they're both buried at Arlington National Cemetery, which I think is quite an honor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So was there any... When you get her permission and the family permission, and now that they're passed on, they have children?
She and Ed had one child and two grandsons.
Okay.
And even before her passing, she had put all of the royalties and any monetary gain from the projects in the name of her grandsons.
Oh, very nice. So full support even from the family.
Total support, yeah. And her son, Stephen, is very excited about the film, as I am too, because that will really reach more people with her story.
Sure. And
be able to tell it in a little different way.
Now, before you embarked on this journey of writing a book, do you have a history of writing, or?
No, not really. I took creative writing classes, and I have been in the advertising agency business and have published a magazine, have written for newspaper and magazines in the past. So it really wasn't about the desire for me to write a book. It was about the desire for me to tell her story to the world. And actually, more than a desire, it was a promise that I made to her. And our vision was to walk down the red carpet, at the premiere together. But she's with me in spirit, and there are things that are happening and falling in place that undoubtedly, convincingly tell me that she's right there.
Well, and when you read the book, the power of someone being there with you in spirit is real, and it is a driving, motivating force for sure. Plus, you said it out loud to the world, and you put it in the universe. Now you have to do it.
Absolutely. And that's how I roll too.
So you started writing the book. We had the 2008 economic, downfall, and then unfortunately you suffered a stroke in 2010.
Yeah, I had a near-death stroke in 2010. I woke up on a Monday morning, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. By the time I got to the hospital in Mooresville, within 3 hours, I was unable to wiggle a toe, a finger, anything on my left side. I was locked up and 100% paralyzed on my left side. So I really dodged a bullet, and it took me almost a year and a half to recover. I had to learn how to walk again, and it was a tough go, a really tough time.
So during that year and a half, what happened to the book?
It went on the back burner. It was all about survival and the financial challenges of me not being able to work. And
right.
Yeah.
So you picked back up in 2012. And then started from there. And you said Charlene passed.
She passed in 2013, which was very difficult. Yeah,
I'm sure.
She'd had a brain tumor and had complications with surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Something like a brain tumor. And she was how old?
She passed at 83.
I would say in her 80s. So at 83, and to live those 2 years, in the forest like she did, it's amazing. And for people who, when you read the book, just the sheer determination that she never gave up. So many people would have quit.
Oh, good Lord.
So many people.
I've spoken to somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 students, and I always ask how many of you would have survived, and only one has answered that they would have, and it was a young boy that said it before he even thought about it. So it's possible. I mean, you don't know, but I know that I wouldn't have.
What was the biggest thing that you learned about yourself writing this book?
That I carry Charlene with me every single day, that people stress over really stupid stuff, flat tires and running late for meetings and those types of things, what she went through, no child, no human should ever have to endure, but it's a miracle that she did and survived.
It's today I used her story as a little tiny token of inspiration to myself. I had a MRI today, and if you've ever been in an MRI machine, they're tight. And I'm not typically a claustrophobic person. However, today was the first probably 60 seconds. I wouldn't say I was a little anxious, and I closed my eyes, and I had the earphone, or actually they were playing music, and I said to myself, "This little girl survived in the woods for 2 years." People trying to hurt her and kill her. This is 20 minutes.
Right.
Suck it up, Buttercup. And
I was like, okay. You're exactly right. And so many people that have read the book have had that same response. And, I like to say that, I've met a ton of celebrities in my nonprofit work. And, to give you an idea, when I spoke to a class recently, and I said, well, like Rod Stewart, these are 7th and 8th graders, and none of the kids knew who Rod Stewart was. I knew I was getting old at that point, but I said, my role model and my hero is Charlene Schiff, and I look up to her. And when I'm out scraping frost on my windshield and I'm running late for a meeting and I've got the credit card going and the shavings are getting on my hand and I'm freezing and just really mad at the world, and then I'll stop and think about Charlene and go, this is nothing, Jack.
Right.
Get over it. And move on, because we all tend to do that. We get a little bit complacent and we feel like, we need to be comfortable all of the time. And with her, she had 2 years where she was hunted like an animal, and she was looking over her shoulder nonstop, 24/7. And I can't even imagine that.
Was there ever a time when you were during your time with her, even though many, many decades have passed, where did she seem bitter or angry?
That's the craziest part about it. never for a moment, not with me.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that she was the warmest, kindest, most humble, gentle soul that I have ever met in my entire life. And you wouldn't think that. I know that I would be very angry and very bitter, and she never showed that.
You know, reading the book, I had so many emotions, and anger was absolutely one of them. And you know, it's amazing that there was a time in our history that this really happened, and it's real, and that we as human beings can be that mean and cruel to each other.
And it's still going on today.
Right. What do you? I was talking about you coming on the show in your book today to one of my colleagues, and they were kind of amazed, and they also said, "Can you believe that there's people who believe that the Holocaust never existed, like it's made up?"
Yeah, I was asked at one of the, I think it was one of the book clubs or one of the retail store readings I did, had I ever had a Holocaust denier
Yeah.
At one of my events say anything about it never happening. And I said, no, I haven't, but I wish I would.
Yeah.
Because I would set them straight very quickly.
I almost wonder what is it about the deniers that they feel like, you know, what's the aha? Like, what is that moment where they go, see, that's not right. Something's off. That's not true. Because how? I mean, you have people who live through it. You still have people who have the tattoos. They tell the stories. There's movies. There's books. There's been trials. What's the trials of Nuremberg? No,
Nuremberg.
Nuremberg. That's right, Nuremberg.
And when the liberation armies went in and documented everything per Eisenhower's command, that, you know, take pictures of everything that you can. I don't care how graphic it is, what it is, the camps, the bodies, everything, because somewhere down the road in the future, there are going to be people that say this never happened.
What foresight.
Yeah, incredible. And just going to the museum alone is evidence enough of everything that you need to see.
100%.
I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah, it's almost like I can understand the flat earthers, which I don't understand at all. I can understand that more than I can. Yeah, the Holocaust. Man, that was kind of a spoof. What?
It's funny that you say that, because I made that that correlation at one of my readings too.
Did you really?
I sure did. I mean, because to me that's pretty ridiculous in my opinion. But
of course,
I think there's enough evidence out there that
right.
You know, that the Earth is round. But it's kind of like that. I mean, where's it come from? I guess it's just from hatred, because there's no other reasoning.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a good conspiracy too. You know, they're entertaining, but this one is like, this is a no-brainer. Yeah. And you said, you know, the hate that's still out there. This was going on in Europe, Germany, throughout that part of the world. But how did the hate get here in the U.S., do you think? How did it start here? Because you said, you know, you face it in every state that you've lived in here in the U.S. You know, we weren't going through that here. You know, through that.
Well, I mean, I faced it in the you know, in the 60s and in the 70s. I don't know the origins of that, but it was definitely here.
Right.
So
I just wonder what led to the hatred here. Was it coming over? Was it taking up jobs? Was there just some sort of stereotype where the Jewish immigrants were coming, you know, to America? Like, what was the, you know, we've learned in history about slavery. We've learned, you know, even in the late 1800s, I believe, or was it the late 1800s or mid 1800s, when the Chinese were coming over into California, and you see a lot of the things happening now that were happening, you know, over 100 years ago. They were trying to build a wall. They were making them. Shaming them into certain things and cutting their hair and doing all this other stuff. But it's interesting how history continues to kind of repeat itself.
Yeah, it does. That's the scary part. But I can tell you that I have a renewed faith in humanity by speaking to all the students that I've been getting in front of with Charlene's story and Child of the Forest. I'm somewhere around 1,500 plus students, mostly middle school, 7th and 8th grade, that I've been invited into the classrooms and do book readings, book discussions, and these kids get it, and they're sharp, and the teachers are teaching the Holocaust, and I talk about some of the things to expect when they get to college on the campuses and some of the organizations to look out for. And they're sharp and they're interested and they were connected. So definitely have a renewed faith in humanity moving forward. And I tell the children, you're it. You're our hope. You're our future because, you know, we didn't quite get it right, but you guys can do it and you can fix things. And I think they're ready for the challenge.
And are you mostly speaking to kids here around the Iredell County, Mecklenburg County area, or are you branching out? And
I've branched out. I did a reading outside of Sparta, and I actually connected with a classroom in Marietta, Georgia, and we did a Skype discussion. It was awesome. Very, very sharp kids. Now, that class was sixth graders. And first I thought maybe they're just going to be too young, but the teacher assured me, who's a friend of mine, that these kids were sharp, they were advanced, and they were reading 12th grade material. And she was right. These kids were on the ball.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there plans for you to travel more and cast your net a little wider in the schools, or even something different?
Yes, I think more so on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, my focus is the film. We've got some momentum and some progress going, and I'm talking to potential investors at this stage. We have a lot of elements for the film in place, so kind of making that my focus. But
Yeah, sure.
I really enjoy the readings, and the schools were important to Charlene as they are to me.
So let me ask you this: someone like yourself who's started off with this book and now it's possibly going to be made into a film or go in that direction, how difficult is it to get the book in front of the right people?
It's a process.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I'd say difficult because I've got one of those, glasses half full personalities. I've always been an entrepreneur and I've done some amazing things in my life in the nonprofit and for-profit sector. So, I just saw it as a challenge, but more recently, over the last 30 to 60 days, we've got several high-level people taking a look at funding the film. So it took a little while, but persistence.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And the book helped. I mean,
Oh, gosh.
obviously.
And are you able to track, so you actually give the books away at the schools you sign?
I do a variety of things. I've underwritten books. I've had other people underwrite books. Some of the schools have wanted to pay a very discounted rate for books. I give books to many libraries in the region, and just do what I can to get her story out there, and kind of look at that as the foundation of moving forward with the film. And I'm not too worried about book sales moving forward because when the movie comes out,
Is there one story or one part of her story that didn't make the book?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
We got it all in there, and the challenge is going to be to get it all in the film as well. But
Sure.
No, that's what really blew me away when I heard her story initially, and I didn't hear all of it. We brought her to Charlotte. We did some videotaping of her telling her stories, and we had many, many conversations and interviews with Charlene. But it just was like one right after the other, after the other. In her words, she said, "Death was always one step behind me." And sure enough, it was. Now, you asked about her being bitter, and I never saw any of that, but I can tell you that as an adult, when she moved to the States and, had gotten married to Ed, and they'd be driving down the road like, a highway like I-77, whatever, and you see the trees and brush on the sides of the road, she would instinctively look at the brush and think to herself, is this thick enough for me to hide in? Now, this is as an adult, decades later, when she's safe, she's over here in the States, and that stuck with her. And I believe that was, a form of PTSD that they just didn't have a name for it back then. But
100%.
She was definitely traumatized.
If there's one person that you've met who definitely could be diagnosed with PTSD, it would be her.
Yeah.
For sure. Is there one story that when you think of Charlene that pops into your mind?
Yes, and I think most people that have read the book, and it will definitely be a defining moment in the film, is the river scene on the riverbank, and that's my most common question that I'm asked is,
Darn it, I thought I was original.
Relates to the river scene, and the land that we're looking at in South Carolina for filming has the Catawba River running through it.
Nice.
And so we've thought that out. But that is probably, the most emotional and certainly the most asked about, scene.
It's a pivotal part in the book.
Oh, it is. It is.
So will you guys be filming hopefully in North and South Carolina?
Well, unfortunately, North Carolina, and sorry about that, but I developed a runny nose this morning. I don't know why. North Carolina changed its film tax rebate laws.
Again?
Well, this has been, I think, a couple of years to the point where it drove away a lot of film and national commercial type production.
Good job.
And jobs.
Yeah.
And so Georgia's the king daddy right now on the East Coast, and they have a very healthy budget, but I believe that we're going to be able to do it in South Carolina and get the tax rebate that the project deserves. It will create a lot of jobs.
That's fantastic. So her story keeps on moving and she keeps on giving.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy. I have very high aspirations. I see Academy Awards. I've always been a big thinker.
Yeah.
I want to do the red carpet premiere at Blumenthal Performing Arts Center, and have a lot of friends and family there. And
well, I hope it happens. You can bet 100% that we will be rooting for you for sure.
And you'll get some complimentary tickets too.
Well, I will be honored, sir. I'll be honored. Is there anything that you're looking for in the future as far as maybe you're going to embark on writing another book or trying something different?
I don't have a burning desire to do that. I mean, the film is going to be such a major production, and I'm really looking forward to that. But I have been encouraged by so many people to write a book on fundraising. I've done a tremendous amount of nonprofit work in my life for almost 35 years plus, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Dove House Children's
I was getting ready to ask you.
I'm a founding board member. I'm a legacy board member. I've been doing their fundraising since day one, affectionately called The House That Jack Built. And that was right before my stroke. So there was a lot of stress involved in building the facility, but we have a $2.2 million facility with no mortgage, and that was a lot of work.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's very beautiful, by the way. Can you speak to some of the other nonprofits that you've helped before?
Oh, my Lord, yeah.
Well, and before we get to that, for those maybe listening, sometimes I get lost and think that everyone knows what we're talking about. Could you explain what the Dove House is and what it provides?
Yeah, Dove House provides services for sexually assaulted and abused children as an intervention program. We also have recently gone into the school systems in the Mooresville graded and the Iredell Statesville school systems with an education and prevention program to 1st and 5th graders called Safety First. So we run the gambit of, the education, the prevention, all the way through the intervention, which is, sad, but it's a good thing that we're there. So we assist the children in facing the trauma, and we provide forensic interviews to build a prosecution of the perpetrator. We also have a medical examination room and child, the victim advocate services, so that the child and the non-offending family are taken care of throughout the entire process.
In a previous profession, I worked in a local emergency department for about 8 years, and we had some SANE nurses there.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, I do not... Those are special people that have had to see, some horrific things. And, being a nurse, you got to be pretty special anyway, takes a special person. Not everyone can do it. Just like anything else, not everybody can do everything.
Right.
But to do that.
Right. That stands for a sexual assault nurse examiner, which you
correct.
know, but for the people listening.
That's correct.
And we have volunteer pediatricians too. I mean, it's very involved. We're a model agency. We've won an award from the governor for the work that we do, and we're regarded as really one of the top children's advocacy centers, certainly in the region, if not beyond that.
Well, thank you and congratulations for doing that and providing that to the county, because it seems, I don't know if it's just the media cycle or what's going on, but we're hearing more and more about children being sexually assaulted in our county. And I don't know if it's just always been going on or now it's just more new. I don't want to say newsworthy because that's not the right way to say it.
The statistics are about the same, which is crazy, but we see 4 to 5 children a week.
4 to 5 a week.
Yes. Yeah, that's scary. And
that's just the ones you know about.
Those are the reported cases, exactly. Those are the ones we know about.
Gosh, so what does it say to? I guess
who knows what the real number is?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the real number? 3 to 5, 10 times that? I mean, who knows?
We know it's much higher.
Oh,
yeah.
This is a heavy show.
Yeah,
but that's what this show too is about. It's also about discussion and discussing things that are uncomfortable, but bringing light to the subject and getting the word out there for people to talk about, and to learn from one another. So it's important, hurting and abusing children is something that nobody wants to talk about or think about. It's that elephant in the room, but it's happened. It happens and it's real. And I think it's fantastic, and it's so important what you guys are doing in the school with SAFE. How long has that program been around?
I think it's only about 2 years now.
About 2 years.
Yeah, we've reached thousands of students, so it's been very successful, very well received.
And if there's people listening, is there a way that they could volunteer at the Dove House or donate to the Dove House? How can the community get involved?
Donations are great. Auction items for our events are great. Volunteers for the events are great. Unfortunately, due to the confidentiality of the subject matter, we don't allow volunteers in the process or at Dove House.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that because my wife and I actually volunteered, I believe, 2 years ago at the Mac Center in Mooresville for the event. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's our big annual event. We just came off of it May 4th. Looks like we raised about $235,000 net proceeds in one night in Mooresville, which is a very successful nonprofit event.
That deserves a clap. That's right. And speaking of, you recently just won an award for yourself, correct?
Yes, yep.
You were recognized.
Very exciting, and that is the IBPA, Independent Book Publishers Association, Benjamin Franklin Silver Award for Child of the Forest, and that was less than 6 months after the book was released, and from what my publisher tells me, it's quite the prestigious award. So
I was going to say, do most people who are listening and they hear that don't understand how prestigious that is, and the book being out roughly 6 months, and for you to receive such an accolade is pretty impressive, correct?
And the reviews, yes, it is, and the Amazon reviews have been unbelievable. I've got a couple if you want me to read them.
Absolutely, please.
I just very, very proud of them. An impactful account of the amazing will to survive against all odds and the power of love and family. The book expanded my understanding with yet another dimension of the Holocaust experiences of an amazingly brave and tenacious young girl. Just when I thought I had read enough, this book filled me with yet another view. I am grateful. And if you want, I'll read one more.
Yeah, sure.
A must read, an incredibly riveting true story of a young girl's tenacity to survive. It's a completely new perspective of the Holocaust and a must-read for young adults and adults alike. We can all learn something from Charlene Perlmutter Schiff. I'm in awe.
So, I want to go back. And by the way, I didn't write any of those. Okay.
Yeah. And they were all unsolicited.
All unsolicited. Yeah. What is, I want to go back a second to what you're saying on what's happening on college campuses. Are you comfortable touching on that?
I am. Absolutely.
And actually, there's a lot of people, most people don't know. So can you help educate myself and the audience of what it is you mean by that and what's going on college campuses?
Well, one in particular, there's an organization called BDS.
BDS.
BDS. And when I do my readings and book clubs, I did one in downtown Mooresville. There were 30, 35 people there. And I was talking about the anti-Semitism and how it's growing on the college campus. And to prove my point, I said, I'll bet that none of you have even heard of this. And I asked, and not one person in the room had heard of BDS. And back to the point of the media not reporting it, not doing a good job. it basically stands for boycott, divestiture, and sanction of Israel. To the point where maybe more so in Europe at this stage, but they have labels printed up saying, don't buy this product. It was made in Israel, and people will go through grocery stores, and if there's a product like Sabra hummus or something that was made in Israel, they'll slap that sticker on it when no one's looking. And they are basically chanting, for the destruction of Israel. And in my view, that's anti-Semitic as you can get. It's not anti-Zionist, it's anti-Semitic. They really want to, eradicate the Jews and the Jewish state. So on the college campuses, it's a movement that is kind of cloaked in, the social justice for the underdog, the Palestinians, but you have to become very educated on that subject. It's not as clear-cut as they make it to be. So a lot of misguided and unsuspecting youth are drawn into movements like that because they didn't really research it. They don't know it. And you've got, I hate to say it, but people like Roger Waters of Pink Floyd spouting the hatred at their concerts. My cousin, actually a close cousin, David Draymond of Disturbed. I don't know if you've heard of Disturbed.
Yes.
All right, very cool. Well,
yeah.
His grandfather and my grandmother were brother and sister.
Oh, wow.
All right. And he recently has a video, I think it's on YouTube, where he takes on, because he's got a concert, I think just coming up now in Israel. Mm-hmm. And, and he was getting pressure from some of the folks not to perform in Israel, which is ridiculous. We've got hundreds of cousins in Israel by the last name of Draymond. So, and he calls out Roger Waters, and he said, that's not the way to solve this problem, and I couldn't agree anymore. So that would be one of the organizations to look out for and research it, and don't research one side of it because, that side is just, there to lure you in.
Of course.
But other college campuses, I have a petition that's been going on for UNC Chapel Hill, who has hosted, and yeah, I know, and we have 3 daughters we've put through the UNCC system. So it's crazy, but they've hosted a hate-filled anti-Semitic speaker and paid her, to spout off this hate at a basically a health and wellness seminar. So it had totally unrelated, but they'll get it in wherever they can get it in. And there was even a rapper who was calling for the audience to get into the anti-Semitic movement. It seems so unbelievable, but it's true.
It's interesting about Chapel Hill because they had this, and they're going through this whole removing the statue of, I think, Silent Sam.
Yeah.
And how that's a, symbol of hate and slavery and, it's got to go. But they'll pay for someone to come and spout that about, anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And meanwhile, they're silencing the Jewish groups on the campuses called Hillel, which are the Jewish organizations that are, formed on the campus, mm-hmm. To keep a pulse on that kind of stuff. But they basically just pushed them aside and said, you don't have a voice in this. And that's not just there, NYU, New York University, Wake Forest. I mean, it's spreading like crazy, and I don't get it. But for some reason, they justify that that's okay.
How?
I don't know.
How is it okay to alienate or silence one group, but it's not okay to do another? And why is the media not reporting on it? I hate to be conspiratorial, but there has to be a reason. Because this isn't made up. I mean, this is real.
It doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit the agenda, unfortunately, and that's the case. And I really try not to get into politics when I talk about Child of the Forest and my book clubs and school readings, because I think, anti-Semitism, hatred, bullying, and I talk to the students about, hey, if you're being bullied, speak out. Go tell a safe adult. Go tell someone, because if you remain silent, that just means another child is going to be bullied by the same person. And I don't know if you're familiar with Elie Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor, author of Night, which was required reading in many, many books at a fairly early grade level. Had a quote something to the effect of, you can't remain silent. Silence only helps the oppressor, which makes sense. It never helps the victim. Think about that. So if you don't speak out, all you're doing is helping an oppressor continue doing what they're doing. You have to speak out, and that's one message I drive home to the children. If you see something that's not right, tell somebody about it, do something about it, and take action.
I had several months ago, I had a guest on here, Mr. Marvel, Chris Benfield, and he does magic. But he also has an anti-bullying show that he puts on around this county, and he's talked to about 5,000 kids, I think, so far, and he's been doing it for a few years. And actually, he's looking for funding because it has funding to keep it going.
Right.
But I've had a lot of people reach out to me and tell me that the one thing they took away from that interview is he had the kids, part of the show is they yell at this piece of paper, and he kind of crumbles it up and does this and that, and crumbles it in the paper, and eventually forgives them, and then he uncrumbles the paper. Like, you see anything about the paper? And they're like, well, no, it's just crumbled up. It's like, yeah, but all those wrinkles and all those lines and all that deformity, those were the words that people said to them. So yes, the paper forgave you, but what you said is still there, being mean to someone and bullying them. So, he did the simple, I think, math of if one kid bullies 3 times a day, so if he can stop if 1% of the audience doesn't get bullied, that leads to thousands not being bullied that he's been able to reach. And that's a great, it's a good episode too. He does some really cool magic too. He bends a spoon with his mind. I don't know how he did that. but his message is really good, and it really draws in the kids. But he focuses on I think K-5 or K-6.
Okay.
Starting them young. But you can see bullying at a very young age.
Oh yeah. The kids are our future. They really are. We need to invest more in them and make sure they understand that they can make a difference.
Absolutely. Empower them to let them know that they can make a difference.
Great word. Yeah.
Is there anything else from the book Child of the Forest that you wanted to read, or an excerpt or something that you wanted to go over while we're here?
I can read one little excerpt here.
Sure.
It's kind of graphic.
Okay.
As you know, the book is pretty intense there.
It is very intense.
And didn't hold back. I will... Okay, I'll go through this here, and then hopefully it'll be fine. I'd seen bodies, perhaps hundreds, sprawled out on the ground in all sorts of horrific poses. I'd watched men, women, and children hung and shot for no reason other than that they were Jewish. But all these deaths had happened in the ghetto, a place of ugliness and squalor, a place where rats picked over bodies until starvation led us to kill them for food. It was a place where a truck passed through every few days, yanking people, children, women, and their babies, old people, anyone not working, off the street and took them to their deaths. I'd watched from my little windows as my gray-haired pediatrician, Dr. Grossfeld, was beaten with sticks, then dragged to the back of a truck with grated sides. I'd seen women and children cry out, knowing what was to come, Dachau or a bullet to the head, then being dropped into a ditch. I'd watched the truck slowly pull away and listened to women and children screaming to darkened windows. Tell my daughter, tell my son, tell my mother. But I'd never felt like this. Standing over the bodies, I looked up into the deep starry night and then across the dark field. These were just men, farmers who did this. Mama, this field, this night, this is not the ghetto. These weren't soldiers. I know, Neshomala. I hugged my arms across my chest. There is no place for me. There are no people for me. Only you, Mama, and Chia, beautiful Chia. I'm waiting for you, my love. I pulled my coat over my shoulder and made my way as quietly as I could into the woods, listening for Mama's voice on the breeze. That was a scene from The Haystack, if you remember The Haystack, which would probably be the next moving chapter.
Oh gosh,
to the river.
And it's interesting too. And thank you for reading that. And that was I knew exactly what part of the book you were in. They thought they were safe, and then come to find out, they weren't. And this wasn't soldiers. These weren't SS soldiers that were doing that.
Farmers.
These were farmers.
Crazy.
And it's interesting too. There's another part in the book where I really thought that guy was going to help her. I thought, I was like, he's a nice man. He's going to help her. Then she shows him the gold coin. And then he's like, this is more than they'll give you for my body. And he's like, well, what if I get both?
Exactly.
And it's just, what were people doing? I don't have the words to articulate of what
for
was,
meager rewards. That's an exercise I do in the schools, and to prove a point, a librarian at one of the Mooresville readings came up with this, but I would ask half of the class to stand up by, it's if you're wearing glasses, stand up. If you're wearing red, stand up. If you have whatever, sneakers on, stand up. So about half of the class is standing, and then I would say, okay, you're being hunted. You're being hunted 24/7 because you wear glasses, because you're wearing red. What's the difference? Because you're Jewish? It doesn't really make any sense. But it doesn't stop there.
Mm-hmm.
You're being hunted, and you have to look over your shoulder the entire time. But those of you that are sitting, that's your best friend, that's your neighbor, that's the customer of your shop that you sell, bread at, and you're going to turn them in tomorrow for a meager reward. And the kids are like, I'm not going to turn in my best friend. That's what happened. You know, that's the reality. That's the truth. So it's a very, emotional way to show them that, that scenario.
Well, it's a nice drill because they start to understand it. They pick up on it. They're like, wait a minute, I wouldn't do that. But that is exactly what happened.
Yeah. So, it was an amazing story, and so looking forward to the film. I can't tell you, but very excited. And
so how about the film? When do you suspect, or is there a time that filming may start, shooting may start? Are you still in the very infancy of this?
I wouldn't say infancy, only because there's been so much work done on the front end already. But I would say that the goal would be early fall to start pre-production, which means completing the screenplay, the script, and bringing on the director and a casting director and start talking about those elements of the film before going into production.
So there has to be a screenplay. So educate my listeners and myself, because you write a book, it just doesn't automatically go right to the big screen. That's not how that works.
And I won't be writing that as well, because that's a whole specific genre of...
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Plus, for the direction that we're wanting to go with the film, and it's, without disclosing it, it's a fairly high budget for an independent feature film. We want a very high caliber, a recognizable director. We want some A-list actors. We want to do the best job that we can with this production.
There's another local writer from out of Iredell County, from North Iredell. His name is Blake Crouch. No relation to me, but he's a fantastic writer. I'd love for him to come on the show if he is ever in town. But he has had several of his novels turned into a TV series, Wayward Pines, which was on FX.
Okay.
There's another one called, it's not Better Things. It's something else. I even watched it. I can't remember. It loses me at this time. But he has another film that's Shonda Rhimes picked up and is turning it into a Netflix movie. Cool. He's doing a lot of big things, and he's from around here. So I'm sure if that guy could help you. Yeah,
I'd love to meet him. I'm all about connecting the dots, and I want to keep it as local as possible.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And that's all about supporting local too.
Yeah, I'm not going to Hollywood, but my goal is to bring Hollywood to the Carolinas.
That would be great.
Yep.
So possibly this could be a film that people would be able to watch in 2 to 3 years, maybe? Is that fair to say?
Sooner than that. Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully the end of 2020, ideally.
Oh,
wow.
Okay.
I'd love to see it as a holiday release, but, on the big screen, and we'll see.
Well, I can tell you for sure that Charlene is going to be watching, and she's going to be looking down, and she's going to be with you and guiding you and everybody who has any part of the film and in the book forward for sure. And is there anything else that you want to tell the audience about the book, or is there a story you want to share, or something? This has been pretty. It's been pretty heavy. Is there a funny story that Charlene or experience that you had with her that just brings a smile to your face?
she had told me about a time when she spoke to her grandson's class, and you know, she had spoken about some of the things that she had to eat, and which, you know, when you're in survival mode, you do what you got to do. But he just thought that it was so cool and wanted to make sure all his fellow students knew that she had eaten earthworms because, as he said, they're high in protein. So that was kind of cute. But it doesn't get any better from that, as you know.
No, it does not.
So, and there is a story. When I went to meet her and her husband at a restaurant in Washington, D.C., I had noticed after, you know, we did a lot of small talk, getting to know each other, that the tip of her ring finger was missing. And immediately wondered if that had anything to do with her Holocaust experience, because she didn't tell that story at the museum. She couldn't tell them all in that short time we had with her. And she went right into how that happened. And that, like, really sucked the wind out of me, because I don't know if she saw me looking at it or it just came about that she wanted to go into that story. But you'll have to read the book to figure out, to find out how that happened. But extremely emotional and riveting, to say the least. But I just hope people will buy the book at jackgrossman.com and share it with their friends. Every book that's ordered from that site, and by the way, there's hardcover and paperback available. I personally sign with a little message, and just want to keep my promise to Charlene to tell her story to the world.
And we're trying to do our little part in helping you keep that promise.
Greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. And if people want to donate to the Dove House, how can they do that?
They can go to dovehousecac.org. dovehousecac.org. That stands for Children's Advocacy Center. And we have some neat things coming up that I can't announce yet because they haven't really been approved yet. But we're looking at a pretty cool event coming up that they'll want to get involved in.
All right, we'll definitely keep our eyes and ears peeled for that announcement.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show. And for everyone, here is the book. I'll put this up here for folks to see. This is called Child of the Forest, and you can pick it up at jackgrossman.com.
That's it.
Thank you so much for coming in, sir. It has been an honor and a privilege.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Appreciate it.
Yep. See you guys. Appreciate it.
I didn't realize that you could probably go to the other camera every time.